Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. This week, I'm very excited because I have my hands on Brandon Sanderson's third secret project book, and I'm really hopeful that this is going to be the one that I really love. I don't know whether it will be. I do have the previous two back here. Tress, I did like it, but the sense of humor did wear on me a little bit, and I didn't love it. I thought the bit in the middle was a little bit boring, and then the ending didn't come together as much as like as wonderfully as some other Brandon Sanderson stuff does. Then The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England was just really not my sense of humor. So like really the thing that let me down, or the thing that stopped me from liking the first two books, was the sense of humor. Why do I think this third one will be better? Delusion? Hope? Everlasting? I don't know. So the third secret project book is actually called Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I used to keep thinking that it was Yumi the Nightmare Painter, but it's Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And I have read, how much? The first 3 chapters. I'm actually really disappointed that the ebook cover is just like this very boring text, because there is a nice cover, and the ebook did have it as like the second page, but for whatever reason it's not showing up on the cover when I like close down my ebook, so that's annoying. However, this will also be the first time that I get my hands on the book while I'm reading this. So it has actually already been delivered to my mum's house just today. I'm gonna probably go and get it on Friday. It's currently Wednesday. Because we're planning on moving sometime this year, possibly. I got the books delivered to my mum's house. Most of the year I've been able to redirect them to my house, but the last couple, that hasn't been an option in FedEx's system. For some reason, it's very annoying, because I'd much rather they came to my house as long as I'm here. Still up in the air as to when we'll actually move, whether it'll be this year or not, who knows. Anyway, I will get my hands on the book in a couple of days, but I think I kind of prefer reading it on the ebook anyway than these fancy books. I don't know about reading from fancy books. Maybe I'm not fancy enough for it. Anyway, let me talk about the book. I'm really loving it so far. We've met the Nightmare Painter. He goes by the name Painter. So this is in a world where there's just a single star, no sun, just a single star, and all the world is in darkness except for these like kind of like colorful power lines that provide light and energy. And I'm still not really clear on what these power lines are. But Painter is a nightmare painter, and they kind of go and find, like, all around the city is this darkness, and bits of it will break off and turn into nightmares the more it spends time around humans. And the nightmare painters are responsible for like getting rid of these nightmares using painting. Anyway, also we have a character in a completely different place. I suspect on the planet that is the star that they can see. And on this planet, we have Yumi, who's like kind of a religious figure, and every single part of her day is planned and like controlled for her. And it's meant to be like a very exalted position. And she takes it very seriously, like she's very dedicated to doing her best in this position. However, she also would really like to be doing some things of her own. So I imagine these two characters are going to come together and somehow like fill each other's problems. So with Painter, it's been talked about a little bit about how lonely he is. So yeah, I think they're going to come together. I'm really looking forward to it. I have no idea how they're going to come together, since one's over here and one's on a completely different planet. But so far it has been written really nicely, like kind of almost, not really, but quite lyrically for Brandon Sanderson, and it hasn't been too heavy on the humor. There's a little bit, but not too bad. And just the imagery and the way that it's being described is so visual that I'm really looking forward to the art inside the book. I really hope I'm gonna love it. And I really hope I'm gonna love the story. I'm really hopeful for this one. The other thing I will be reading this week is Son of a Witch by Gregory Maguire. So I have the audiobook for this. I always have to have an audiobook on the go as well as a physical book. This is the sequel, or the second book in the Wicked quartet. So Wicked is like a Wizard of Oz retelling from the Wicked Witch's perspective. I really love the world building. I love how it keeps true to like the original Wizard of Oz story and kind of makes it like Dorothy's story was true, but just Dorothy didn't have the information to really understand everything that was going on. This one though, I think follows the Wicked Witch's son. I have read this about 20 years ago and I remember nothing about it, so we'll see how the audiobook goes. Hello. So I just got home from my mum's where I went and picked up this box. So let's have a look what's in it. To be honest, I already opened it to show my mum and my sister. But anyway, the things in the box, other than the book, we have another little character pin. This one is Shalon, how you say it, right? From the Stormlight Archives. So that'll go in that collection. I actually really like the sticker. Ooh, not sure about my white balance. I really like the sticker. And I have been thinking, like, I keep getting all these stickers and being like, I don't know where to put them. But actually, I have an iPad with like a keyboard case. Maybe it needs some decoration. I kind of didn't want to ruin it with stickers, but actually it's just getting ruined by life. So I may as well ruin it with stickers. So this one, actually quite pretty. I quite like it. And then as well, we have the bookmark. These bookmarks are just so beautiful. And I really think the visual aspect of Yumi and Painter's Worlds are amazing. This is definitely leaning into, I think, more of Yumi's world, and I think the art in general is more on that side. So let's look at the book. So this is the book. The thing that I was surprised about is it's blue. I thought it was going to be purple for some reason, so that like the set would be more of a gradient. So I kind of want to look at them all next to each other because I guess it is a darker blue. But it's not really gradienting the way that I would like it to. And also, I was noticing the other day that even though the fonts on the spines of these two books are different, and they still look quite good together as a set, but this one, I don't know that the title really looks like it belongs to the same set as these two. I mean, this side still kind of matches, but this title is very different than these two. Even though the font's different on all three, but this one, it really looks different. Oh, and I'm also noticing that Yumi's up the right way, but the Nightmare Painter is up the wrong way, which kind of makes sense given what we know about the world. Oh, and now I'm holding it upside down. I don't know, something's weird with this book in my brain. Why is it like half up one way and half up the other? I guess that's kind of, it makes sense. It does have some really beautiful end pages. I already looked at the art a little bit. I was a bit hesitant that it might have spoilers, but it doesn't seem to. So throughout this book, there's some really lovely, like really colored art, which is exciting. And there's also like non-shiny pages that have art as well. So there's quite a lot of art in here, actually. More, I think I actually didn't see that one when I was looking through it with my mum. I think there's more art than you might realize. And it's all really beautiful. I really love the hues. I'm kind of still got mixed opinions about whether I should start now reading with the physical book. The thing is, I just don't really like reading hardbacks. Like most of my physical reading I do in bed before bed. And not only do I feel like it's not comfortable to lie in bed with a hardback, but I also feel like it's harder for me to make sure that I'm not damaging the book. My neighbor cat's just meowing for me to let him into the room. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going to swap to the physical book or read the ebook, but I would kind of like to see all the pictures as I read it. So I'll work something out. So where did I get up to last night? Let me look. So last night I got up to 24% of the way through this one. Oh, I can hold up this one. 24% of the way through, and for the most part I was really loving the descriptions of Painter's World and Yumi's World. They're very different. I think I explained it last time, but also another element of Yumi's World is that it's really hot and they don't really have any water. The water they get is from steam, and a lot of the plants are like floating on like the hot air. And there's also this weird thing to do with the spirits of that world that Yumi interacts with. So I was really loving the descriptions of the world and just like their personal problems that they were working through. And then just before I finished reading last night, it got up to the part where it created, I guess, the connection between the two characters. And I'm a little bit worried because it feels a little bit gimmicky to me. So I guess we'll see how we go. As well, we did get a little bit of Hoyd. So this is written from like Hoyd, who's a character in the Cosmere telling the story. And I don't think I like Hoyd's writing style. Like I like Brandon Sanderson's, but not Hoyd's. I hate how much he inserts of himself into the story. And as well, there is a part where he's part of the story and there was a chapter just like him explaining his situation and I didn't care. So kind of loving this, but also a little bit worried about the direction it's going in. Anyway, I will continue that. tonight. The other thing I've been reading is Son of a Witch. I actually was walking around all over the place today. I think I've done like 22,000 steps. So I think I'm about halfway through almost. And I don't know if it's because sometimes when you read an audiobook in like a really big chunk, you start just kind of like losing your grip on the story. So maybe I listened to a bit too much today. But I am kind of liking it. Kind of told in two timelines. So initially, we're at this convent and Lear has turned up, but he's really injured and unconscious, and they're trying to look after him and work out what's happened to him. So we're getting the story of those people kind of in the future, seeing what's happened in Oz later on. And then we're also kind of getting the story of Lear right from directly after the Wicked Witch's death, and he follows along with Dorothy, goes to the Emerald City, and he decides to start trying to find Noor, who is this girl that he grew up with. And it's also really interesting because, like, as the reader, you know a lot of Lear's history and how he is connected to events that happened in the greater Oz political world, but Lear himself doesn't really know a lot of those connections, so a lot of times he'll come up against people that the Wicked Witch knew, but he doesn't really know his connection to these people. Or even when he does know, he's not really willing to claim it because he's the son of Elphaba, but he doesn't really know that. She never claimed him, so he's kind of just trying to figure out how he can find Noor, how he can figure out what he wants to do with his life, how he can keep surviving. There's a fair amount in here kind of like analyzing religion, criticizing religion, and then there's also a lot of, I guess, like the pageantry of leadership, which is, you know, the whole Wizard of Oz thing where he's the leader, but he's also very fake behind the scenes, and you get to see a lot of that behind the scenes as new people try to take the leadership of Oz. So I'm really enjoying the world building, but I don't really know now that I'm about halfway through where the story's going, because it's kind of just Lear trying to find himself, which is the part of the story I'm less interested in. But I think it'll come back around and I'll enjoy the ending, hopefully. Hello, so I am currently playing around with like audio setup things and like new editing software, so if anything is weird in any of my videos or any of my most recent videos, that'll be why. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it's obvious. Anyway, I wanted to update you on my reading. I am actually about halfway through Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I have switched to reading it physically. Actually, briefly, we were out today and I read the ebook at that point, but last night I was reading this in bed. To be honest, I was a bit paranoid about ruining the bottom of it, but I do like having the pictures as I go, and I know the ebook has the pictures, but the book pictures are prettier, so I kind of want to read this pretty physical book, and I'm using the like actual bookmark that goes with it. Does it really seem like it goes with it? It goes with the inside. That's the main thing. Anyway, I am about halfway through this, and I am enjoying it. I am purposely trying to be less critical. I think if I was in a very critical mood, I could probably pick holes in it, but instead I'm just trying to enjoy it. I did glance at the author's note at the back. I do normally try to avoid doing that, but I was naughty. And I did see that he mentioned Final Fantasy X. I really love the Final Fantasy games, and so I have been trying to think of it in that Final Fantasy frame of mind. And I guess there is a bit in Final Fantasy X where there is this thing where these characters have a connection and they're, I don't know how to describe it. I think it's actually, so my Final Fantasy, I think everyone has a Final Fantasy that they played first if they play Final Fantasy. And for me, it was Final Fantasy VIII. So in Final Fantasy VIII, there is a kind of this thing where one character slips into another one's life and is dreaming of their life. And it's not exactly like what's happening in this book, but there are some similarities. And so like I'm really trying to get into my like Final Fantasy way of thinking. And I actually think this could be a really cool game. So maybe we'll get that one day in the future. But also like the gimmicky thing, I still kind of think it's a bit gimmicky, but I am enjoying the experiences that the characters are having and their interactions and how they like deal with each other and deal with each other's problems. As well, there is a character in here who's a Cosmere character, and they're not really human. As you might know, I really love non-human characters. Specifically, I like it when they think humans are not very good. But this one is kind of trying to pretend to be a human and really enjoying their human experience, and just has that very like otherly perspective of human nonsense. Like there's so many things that we just think are things you have to do when really it's just human nonsense that we do because that's what we do. And if you really try to explain it, it doesn't really make sense. And I guess there's a perspective in here that's giving that kind of mindset, and I'm loving it. I actually wanted to annotate some lines where that was happening, but I'm not brave enough to annotate my fancy book. Even like just putting sticky tabs in it, I don't know, I'm afraid they're going to rip the page or something. I don't know. For that reason, I almost want to go back to the ebook so I can easily highlight things. But I also know that I never go back and look at ebook highlights, whereas I do go back and look at physical book annotations. So maybe I'll get brave enough to put some flags in at some point, like maybe magenta and teal ones to go with the theme of the book. Maybe. There is also a part in here where both of our characters are kind of artists to some degree, and in one of their worlds there's kind of machines being made that might be able to take over the art of one of them, and I'm quite liking how that compares to our current struggles with AI trying to take over artists' roles in a lot of places. So I'll be interested to see what happens with that as we go through it. But in general, this is definitely my favorite so far of the Secret Project books. I haven't actually read very much of Son of a Witch. Like, I think last time I said I was almost 50%. Now I would say I'm just past 50%. And really all I did is read this bit where he kind of went along with the army for a while and got quite into unionism, which is one of the religions in Oz, and in this Oz anyway. But in general, it hasn't been going so well for him. So I'm kind of looking forward to him separating from that and going off and doing something else, because like it's a good lesson for him, but it's not that interesting to read. What I am enjoying though is because last time when I read Wicked, I actually also read all the Wizard of Oz books by Frank Baum, or all the Oz books, not just the Wizard of Oz, because there's a lot more to Oz than just the Wizard. And there are little bits of all the world building that Frank Baum did, like woven through this. Like Gregory Maguire does so much more with it, and he's not always using the proper Oz stuff, but I really like how he kind of weaves it in throughout the story. So I will continue both of these over the next few days, and I think I should finish them in a couple of days, but we'll see.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So far it's been so hard to live, but lately something in me changed. Let it go, let it be.
Hello, so I am 75% of the way through both these books now, so let's talk about them. Firstly, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I am up to part 4. It does have these beautiful, beautiful pages at the start of each part. Some exciting things have happened. I think for me, there's kind of, I want to say a twist, but it's not really a twist. It's more just like you were kind of led to believe something that was not true. But also like as the reader, you probably kind of led yourself to believe that. Anyway, I'm not really sure where that's going to go in the last part, but I really feel like the last part is where everything's going to escalate, which I am excited for. I'm really interested to see how things are going to end, because there's still just so much you don't know. I will say, I saw someone describing this as a fantasy romance. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, maybe just because I think of myself as not really liking fantasy romance. But also, like, even though there is a lot in here about the two characters' relationship, it hasn't really progressed to much of a romance yet. Even though, I mean, I get the feeling it will, but the story is still really focused on what is happening in each of their worlds and their individual personal struggles, rather than like on the romance. But it is also like kind of a coming of age story as these two characters trying to find their place in their world with a whole bunch of new information that they're discovering as a result of their connection with each other. So like from that perspective and that focus of the book, it is more YA than adult. But then the stuff that's happening in the fantasy world, like it's really interesting. I wish the story was focusing more on that. Like I wish we had gotten a lot more nightmare painting, and even a lot more in Yumi's world with the whole way that the spirits work and the way that her people use the spirits. And even as well on Painter's world, there's like these high-on lines that they use for powering everything. And we still don't even know much about that. Like there's so much to the world building that because the book is focusing on the characters, we're not getting that much of it. But it's the world buildings that I think is the strongest part in this. The characters are good as well. The characters are good. And I guess that's why like I'm enjoying this probably best of all the Secret Project books. I don't know if I could quite say I'm loving it, but I am really enjoying it. Anyway, I'm very excited for the last part, so we'll see how that goes. The other thing I've been doing is listening to Son of a Witch 75% of the way through. And so about halfway through, or just after when I last talked to you, the two storylines kind of came together and Lear recovered from his previous adventures, and now we're kind of moving forward and having to deal with the changes in Oz's leadership. And there also seems to be some bigger thing that's going on in Oz that kind of relates to the animals with a capital A, which is animals that can talk. I still really struggle with it a little bit because in the original Oz books, all animals could talk. Like even Toto eventually talks. But in these books, there's a definite distinction between animals with a little a and animals with a capital A. Animals with a capital A being the animals that can talk and think and are like higher beings, I guess, to the equal level as humans. But there's definitely a big theme in this where certain people or certain leaders of Oz don't think the animals deserve those rights, and under the Wizard of Oz they lost a lot of those rights, and now that seems like it's going to have bigger consequences. So I think this one as well, kind of that beginning part was kind of a coming of age story for Lear, and so I'm kind of glad the story's moving beyond it, and that's kind of how I'm feeling about this one as well. Like I feel like things are going to escalate. It's moving beyond that coming of age thing, although I think it'll still be incorporated in this somewhat. Anyway, I guess my summary at 75% is I'm very interested to see how both of these are going to end. So I think that's how you want to go into the end of a book, right? I think so.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So far it's been so hard to live, but lately something in me changed.
Hello. So final update, because I've finished both of these books. It's a bit later than I wanted, but we're still doing okay. So let me talk about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter first. I find it really interesting because in some ways the ending was quite predictable. In other ways, it did things that I just never would have expected. Like, I think the story with the characters and their relationships and like how they overcome their difficulties and how they figure out what they want to do in the world, like that stuff, kind of predictable. But the stuff with the world and what was really going on with that was really cool. The only problem I do have with it is it was confusing. So there is a couple of chapters near the end where he basically says, here's the story, but actually I'm going to take this chapter just to explain to you what's actually going on because I know it doesn't make sense. And then there's another chapter that says, yeah, but it probably still doesn't make sense, so let me explain it further. And I really wish those chapters hadn't been necessary, that the explanation had kind of been done through the story. And I think it's because the characters themselves didn't really ever understand what's going on. Like the characters don't really fully understand the world, or at least not to the level that Hoyd does. I still don't really like Hoyd. I don't know, he's too overpowered. He's always trying to be funny and like insightful, and I just want a normal person, and Hoyd is not it. But I do love design, so it's not that I didn't like the connections into the bigger Cosmere. It's just that sometimes I felt like they were a distraction to the story, which could have been a really beautiful story. And it is a really beautiful story. Like, I really enjoyed it. But I just also think that with a bit more work, it could have been amazing. And instead, it's just, like, really good. Also, like, I think I'm actually wearing my Hoyd t-shirt from the first swag box at the moment. And I really love this t-shirt because it's so comfortable. But, like, not a fan of Hoyd at all. So it's very frustrating. And also, I don't think they're going to be putting any more t-shirts in any of the other swag boxes because I think they had too many dramas with like people's sizes not matching what they wanted and just too much drama. But actually, these are such comfortable shirts. I would love to have one that doesn't have Hoyd on the front, and I can probably buy one. But I spent a lot of money on Brandon Sanderson in the last year. Anyway, this is definitely my favorite Secret Project book so far. And I expect maybe overall, but we will see what the last one brings us, I guess. The other thing that I finished this week is Son of a Witch. This one I'm conflicted about. I really liked the journey that the characters went on, and I liked some of the themes, and there's some parts of the way the story is told that were really enjoyable. But at the same time, the ending was very dissatisfying. And in fact, the audiobook actually had like a bit at the end interviewing Gregory Maguire. So I thought there was going to be more, and then it was just the end. But in the interview with Gregory Maguire, it did talk about how he had heard a lot of criticisms of Wicked saying that not all the plot threads were tied up. And he feels like that's what a story should be, because in real life, things all don't get wrapped up nicely. So, like, I think that's fine. It really is more of a book about themes rather than a book about the story. Also interesting, in that interview, he said he wasn't sure whether he would write any more books in the world, but there are 2 more. So I guess he did. And I will be reading those over the next couple of months, probably. Because even though these stories are weird, the way they kind of follow a certain character but give like almost an outside perspective of that character, and then the actual scenes we get are more like the scenes that match the themes rather than like properly telling the story. Maybe that's what it's like. I don't know. It's hard to describe. But anyway, I did enjoy this. Quite dark in bits and quite strange in bits, but some really good bits as well, including some dragons. I was just trying to think about like what were the main themes of this. I think I talked a little bit about the pageantry of leadership, religious analysis, and I guess like, so the very last bit was really about this emperor coming into power and the terror that he is causing, sort of. And Leah has played some part in that, so kind of shows you both an inside and an outside view of that and the effect it might have on the world. And he did in the interview talk about, I guess, everything that was going on in the world around that time, which was like 9/11 kind of times. Anyway, a really interesting book, but quite dark, and like maybe the story isn't as satisfying as you might like. Anyway, that's my reading for the week. Let me know if you've read either of these, because I would love to talk with you about them down in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.